releases the water from bondage and lets it live. To be a bay holds the wonder that, for this moment, the living water has decided to shelter itself between these shores, conversing with cedar roots and a flock of baby mergansers. Like Chimera, I wish for a language that recognizes and advances the animacy of the world, the life that pulses through pines and nuthatches and mushrooms, welling up all around us. Like Chimera, I relish those aspects of discourse that extend being and sentience respectfully and flexibly beyond the usual bearers of such qualities. Like Chimera, I believe that we need, now, a grammar of animacy. A modern predisposition to regard animacy as anomaly runs through what the poet Jeremy Prynne once called mammal language, by which he means the language that is used by humans, encoding intent, agency, and muscular power deep in its grammar. The real underland of language is not the roots of single words, but rather the soil of grammar and syntax, where habits of speech and therefore also habits of thought settle and interact over long periods of time. Grammar and syntax exert powerful influence on the proceedings of language and its users. They shape the ways we relate to each other and to the living world. Words are world makers, and language is one of the great geological forces of the Anthropocene. Projects have recently been started around the world to gain even the most basic of vocabularies for the experiences of life and death in the Anthropocene. These stuttering attempts to speak what it is we are doing have generated ugly new terms for an ugly epoch. Geotraumatics, planetary dysphoria, apex guilt. Such words feel like futile forms of nominalism, a hopelessly hyperactive pointing and naming. They stick in the throat in two ways. They are difficult to utter and hard to swallow. Only one of these recent coinages resonates with me. Species loneliness. For the intense solitude that we are fashioning for ourselves as we strip the earth of the other life with which we share it. If there is human meaning to be made of the wood wide web, it is surely that what might save us as we move forwards into the precarious, unsettled centuries ahead is collaboration, mutualism, symbiosis, the inclusive human work of collective decision-making extended to more than human communities. You look at the network, and then it starts to look back at you. Writing of mycorrhizal fungi, Albrecht proposes that we rechristen the Anthropocene, naming it instead the Symbiocene, an epoch characterized in terms of social organization by human intelligence that replicates the symbiotic and mutually reinforcing life-reproducing forms and processes found in living systems, such as the World Wide Web. The word for world is forest. That evening, in a deep part of the woods far from a road, near an Iron Age earthwork and an old pollard beech grove, on a slope of high ground nicknamed Friendship Rise, Merlin and I settle down for the night. We scrape a shallow fire pit, haul dead birch trunks around it for seats, and set a small fire going with the tinder of leaves and kindling of twigs, in contravention of Epping Forest bylaws, with murmured apologies to the Corporation of London. Merlin opens his rucksack and brings out a small decoction bottle containing a dark moss-green liquid. He shakes it. Coca extract, homemade, the perfect pick-us-up after a day among the leaves. He reaches again into his bag and brings out another bottle. Homemade honey mead, he says. He reaches in again and brings out a third. Homemade cider, he says. The brown glass of the bottle carries a single white label on which is written the word gravity. I pressed this from some windfall apples that had fallen from Newton's apple tree in Cambridge. It's quite hard to get to, that tree. It's in Trinity College. Security is reasonably tight. The scrumping had to be done under cover of night. I wish I could have brought us a bottle of the first ever batch we made. That was from apples scrumped from Darwin's orchard at Downhouse. You can probably guess the label name for that batch. Evolution? Bingo. People begin to emerge from the shadows of the trees in ones and pairs. Friends of mine and friends of Merlin, friends of our friends, invited by social network, by text, by phone, zeroing in on our location using GPS. One brings a harmonica, two bring guitars, and Merlin's brother brings 2 sets of bones and a small set of hand drums. Moths dance around the flames, satellites blip above us, the red landing lights of planes visible through the crown shiners cut paths between the leaves. I have a strong sense of the forest looming around and over and below us. I drink Merlin's cocoa decoction, feel my mind rapidly sharpen. The fire works its magic of storytelling and conviviality. People talk, re-establishing existing connections, make new ones, bring into being a temporary community in that fire-braced forest space. I show the whalebone owl and the bronze casket, explain about their giving and the obligations they bring with them. Merlin and I tell some of our day's understories. Merlin speaks, like Tsing, of the soil as a city beneath our feet in which countless species and kinds of matter are busy interacting. A young man whose nickname is the Hand Owl plays bluegrass on his cupped hands alone, hooting and whooping. Folk songs are sung, 9-pound hammer, 7 drunken nights, brown trout blues, with people passing chorus lines and verses from one to another and back again. Merlin plays the bones, clacking a beat for each new song. The night chills us and the fire warms us. Drums, songs, stories. The trees shifting, speaking, busy making meaning that I cannot hear. Fungi writhing in the birch logs, in the soil. I sit with my back to a birch log, feet to the fire, next to Tara. Tara is tall, gentle of speech, Greek. She is a singer. She grew up on a small island in the Mediterranean. She learned song and voice from a Russian émigré who had been washed up on the island by the tides of history. She tells me about the consequences for the island of the refugee crisis, the networks of support that were put in place for the refugees, but also the resistance of the islanders who saw the crisis as a threat to their ways of life. There reaches a point where you see other humans drowning or washed ashore with nothing, says Tara, where there is no possibility other than to help with all your heart. It isn't kindness exactly, because there is less element of choice than people think, and for this reason it is less noble. Later, Tara sings a sad song from her island, and my heart breaks a little. The flames die to purring embers. I am too tired to see the fire to its end, so I wander away into the forest to find somewhere to sleep. Looking back, I can see only orange glow, shadows cast against the surrounding trunks, then the firelight dwindles until it is lost in the forest's dark. I find myself in a grove of pollard beeches atop a prehistoric earthwork. Under one of them, children have built a den of sticks and boughs, resting them against a low branch to form a crooked timber tent that is long enough for me to sleep in. It is an invitation I cannot refuse. So I creep inside the den and lie down, looking up through its slats at branches, stars, satellites. I feel myself suddenly, strongly, surrounded by beings whose ways of relating to one another are dimly but powerfully perceptible. As if seen through thick gauze, the sensation is at once comforting and lonely-making. Owl hoot, dog bark. Back in the clearing the fire dims, song falls silent. The canopy of the pollards spreads above me, whispering in the night breeze, "There's something you need to hear." Seeking sleep, my mind follows leaf to branch, branch to trunk, trunk to root, and from there down along the hyphae that webbed the earth below. Second chamber. Down in the labyrinth under the old ash tree with the riven trunk, a new passage is chosen and followed.